Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Allen here, and I'm here to read chapter 2 of James and the Giant Peach. If you haven't listened to the first chapter, go watch Miss Breton's video. She was reading chapter 1. And yeah, let's go. Okay, chapter 2. After James Henry Trotter had been living with his aunts for 3 whole years, there came a morning when something rather peculiar happened to him. Peculiar means something weird. And this thing, which I say was only rather peculiar, soon caused a second thing to happen, which was very peculiar. And then the very peculiar thing, in its own turn, caused a really fantastic peculiar thing to happen. It all started on a blazing hot day in the middle of summer. Aunt Sponge, Aunt Spiker, and James were all out in the garden. James had been put to work, as usual. This time he was chopping wood for the kitchen stove. Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker were sitting comfortably in deck chairs nearby, tall glasses of fizzy lemonade, and watching him to see he didn't stop working for one moment. Aunt Sponge was enormously fat and very short. She had small piggy eyes, a sunken mouth, and one of those white, flabby faces that looked exactly like a boiled egg. She was like a great white, soggy, overboiled cabbage. Aunt Spiker, on the other hand, was lean and tall and bony, and she wore steel rimmed spectacles that fixed on the end of her nose with a clip. She had a screeching voice and long wet lips, and whenever she got angry or excited, little flecks of spit would come out shooting out of her mouth as she talked. There they sat, these two ghastly hags, sipping their drinks and every now and again screaming at James to chop faster and faster. They also talked about themselves, each one saying how beautiful she thought she was. Aunt Sponge had a long-handled middle mirror on her lap. She kept picking it up and gazing at her own hideous face. "I look and smell," Aunt Sponge declared, "as lovely as a rose. Just feast your eyes upon my face and observe my shapely nose. Behold my heavenly silky locks, and if I take off both my socks, you'll see my dainty toes." "Ah, don't forget," Aunt Spiker cried, "how much your tummy shows." Aunt Sponge went red. Aunt Spiker said, "My sweet, you cannot win. Behold my gorgeous curvy shape, my teeth and my charming grin. Oh, beauteous me, how I adore my radiant looks. Please ignore the pimple on my chin." "Oh, my dear old trout," Aunt Sponge cried out, "you're only skin and bones. Oh, such loveliness as I possess can only truly shine in Hollywood." Aunt Sponge declared, "Oh, wouldn't that be fine? I'll capture all the nation's heart. They'd give me all the leading parts. The stars will all resign." "I think you'd marry Frankenstein." Poor James was still slaving away at the chopping block. The heat was terrible. He was sweating all over. His arms were aching. The chopper was a large, blunt thing, far too heavy for a small boy to use. As he worked, James began thinking about all the other children in the world and what they might be doing at this moment. Some would be riding tricycles in their gardens. Some would be walking in cool woods and picking bunches of wild flowers. And all the little friends he used to know would be down by the seaside playing in the wet sand and splashing around in the water. Great tears began oozing out of James's eyes and rolling down his cheeks. He stopped working and leaned against the chopping block, overwhelmed by his own unhappiness. "What's the matter with you?" Aunt Spiker screeched, glaring over at him at the top of her steel spectacles. James began to cry. "Stop that immediately and get on with your work, you nasty little beast," Aunt Sponge ordered. "Oh, Aunt Sponge," James cried out. "Auntie Spiker, could we all please just for once go down to the seaside on the bus? It isn't far and I feel so hot and awful and lonely." "Why, you lazy, good for nothing brute," Aunt Spiker shouted. "Beat him," cried Aunt Sponge. "I certainly will," Aunt Spiker snapped. She glared at James, and James looked back at her with large frightened eyes. I shall beat you later on in the day when I don't feel so hot, she said. Now get out of my sight, you disgusting little worm, and give me some peace. James turned and ran. He ran as fast as he could to the far end of the garden and hid himself behind that clump of dirt, old laurel bushes that we mentioned earlier on. Then he covered his face with his hands and began to cry and cry. So there's a picture of James crying. And I forgot to show you the picture of his aunties. There's a picture of Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker. What a shame. Okay, so if you like the video, make sure you leave a comment. What have you been doing today? What are you enjoying about being at home and doing some home learning? And hopefully we'll see you soon. Okay, bye.